Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating research paper titled The Nachash, the Divine Council, and the Primordial Rebellion. And I have to tell you, this text totally challenges one of the most widely accepted narratives in Western history. Okay, let's dive into this. For centuries, the story of Genesis 3 has been treated almost like a children's bedtime story. Just a simple moral lesson about disobedience featuring a piece of fruit and, well, a literal talking snake. But the source material we are looking at today argues that this domesticated, watered-down reading completely misses the ancient Israelite worldview that originally produced it. The paper suggests we aren't just looking at some simple moral slip-up in a garden. Actually, scratch that, it's more like we are looking at the opening battle of a massive, ancient, cosmic war.
Think about it for a second. If you were just walking in a garden and a reptile suddenly started speaking to you, your immediate reaction would probably be sheer terror, right? You'd run away. Yet in the ancient text, Eve doesn't even bat an eye. She doesn't recoil. She simply engages in a theological conversation. Why is that? Well, the paper points out that this is a glaring narrative anomaly if we're reading the story through our modern eyes. But in the ancient Near Eastern world, a speaking animal was never, ever understood as a biological oddity. It was universally recognized as a glaring signal of divine agency, a supernatural being manifesting itself. Eve wasn't surprised because she knew exactly what kind of entity she was talking to.
But here's where things get really dramatic. The source argues that our modern confusion stems from a profound cultural mistranslation. We tend to read the story through a Greek philosophical lens, viewing it as a neat allegory about human morality, the soul, and ethical consciousness, complete with a literal animal tempter. But the original text operates on a completely different frequency, a Hebrew cosmological framework. In this epic ancient Israelite perspective, the story is entirely about a supernatural rebellion. The being in the garden isn't some rogue member of the animal kingdom, it's a luminous, divine entity. It's a member of God's heavenly council acting with a very specific, subversive cosmic agenda.
Section 1, the Nachash triple entendre. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the linguistic forensics completely changed the game. To understand who this being actually was, we have to look at the Hebrew word used in Genesis 3, Nachash. We usually just translate this as the serpent. But that single English word completely fails to capture the brilliant, multi-layered wordplay happening in the original text. The root word, nun sheshin, functions simultaneously as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. And the ancient Israelite reader, they were meant to hold all three of these meanings in their mind at exactly the same time. As a noun, yeah, it means serpent or snake. As a verb, it means a diviner or an enchanter, someone who traffics in supernatural, cross-boundary knowledge. And as an adjective, it literally means the shining one or radiant. In the Hebrew Bible, luminosity and radiance are absolute consistent markers of divine beings. So when you put this triple entendre together, the text isn't describing a reptile at all. It's describing a luminous, serpentine, divine being who traffics in supernatural knowledge.
Section 2, Eden's cosmic crime scene.
So you might be wondering, what exactly was a luminous divine being doing hanging out in a garden? Well, in the ancient Israelite imagination, Eden wasn't just a pleasant park. It was the sacred holy mountain. It was the headquarters of the divine council, the literal intersection of heaven and earth, where God's heavenly assembly met. The Nachash was there because it naturally belonged there. It was a council member. And to visually prove this, look at how the Israelites later constructed the tabernacle. The architecture of the tabernacle was deliberately designed as a scaled-down replica of Eden's sacred space. When priests entered, they moved east to west, the exact opposite of humanity's eastward expulsion from Eden. They'd walk through the courtyard, into the holy place where the menorah stood, which was shaped like a tree with blossoms, representing the tree of life, and finally they'd enter the Holy of Holies. This represented the very center of Eden, guarded by golden cherubim. The tabernacle proves without a doubt that the Israelites understood Eden as the original sanctuary.
Section 3, the jealous throne guardian.
Okay, so if the Nachash belonged in this sacred space, what was its actual rank? Well, texts in Isaiah and Ezekiel reveal it was a top-tier seraph or cherub, a literal fiery throne guardian. But why on earth would such a high-ranking, luminous being rebel? The motive wasn't just some random malice. It was deep political jealousy. We actually find a perfectly preserved record of this exact motive in independent Second Temple Jewish literature. Specifically, the Wisdom of Solomon states, "Through the devil's envy, death entered the world." You see, according to the source, when humanity was created, they were appointed as God's image-bearing vice-regents, basically tasked with governing the earth. This cosmic promotion massively disrupted the existing hierarchy.
This high-ranking throne guardian was just consumed with deep, blinding envy over humanity's new appointment. So, the guardian hatches a plan, and his strategy was ruthlessly precise. He targeted the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, the paper emphasizes something absolutely crucial here. This knowledge wasn't just a basic moral understanding of right from wrong. In the ancient world, knowing good and evil meant possessing council-level judicial wisdom and comprehensive divine discernment. We're talking about the kind of heavy-duty wisdom a king or a divine being uses to rule. God intended for humans to grow into this wisdom naturally, through a trusting covenantal relationship. But the Nachash, he offered a shortcut: autonomous theft. By stealing the wisdom instead of receiving it through trust, humanity fractured the very relationship that was required to use that wisdom properly in the first place.
The fallout of this cosmic heist brings us to the curses, which the paper argues have been wildly misunderstood for generations. When the text says the serpent will crawl on its belly and eat dust, it isn't giving us some zoological evolution of how a reptile lost its legs. Not at all. In the ancient Near East, crawling on the belly and eating dust were established, well-known metaphors for total cosmic humiliation and relegation to the underworld. It's a judicial sentence. The being who tried to illegally exalt itself to the highest position is being permanently stripped of its rank and cast down to the absolute rock bottom of the cosmic order.
Section 4, a unified cosmic rebellion. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because if this event was truly a massive cosmic rebellion, we should definitely expect to see it mentioned elsewhere across the Hebrew Bible, right? And we do. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. We find a unified triptych, 3 different texts describing the exact same event from 3 different camera angles. In Genesis 3, we see the event on the ground in Eden. In Ezekiel 28, we read a lament about an anointed guardian cherub who was blameless in Eden, the holy mountain of God, until pride completely corrupted his wisdom, and he was cast down. And then over in Isaiah 14, we see a being called Helel ben Shakar, the Shining One, who tried to exalt his throne way above the stars of God, but was thrust down to the underworld. The overlap is flawless. It is one being and one rebellion, perfectly mapped across 3 foundational texts.
Now, just to be completely thorough, the paper does address a seemingly related event in Numbers 21. That's the story where the Israelites are bitten by venomous snakes in the wilderness, and Moses has to make a bronze serpent to heal them. The author clarifies that these were literal, ordinary snakes in the desert, not direct appearances of the Eden rebel. However, the connection is typological. It's a foreshadowing. Later in the New Testament, Jesus actually uses this exact wilderness event as an analogy in John 3. He says that just as the bronze serpent was lifted up to save people from death, he too must be lifted up. It's a brilliant typological echo, seamlessly linking that ancient wilderness remedy to the ultimate final resolution.
Section 5, the epic canonical resolution. So, the crucial point is how the rest of the biblical storyline actually resolves this ancient cosmic war. The entire narrative of the Bible, literally from Genesis to Revelation, is fundamentally concerned with resolving this primordial conflict and restoring what was fractured in Eden's sacred space. The timeline traces an incredible arc. It starts with that primordial rebellion in Eden, where the enmity between the woman's seed and the serpent's seed is first declared. It ripples through Israel's history in the wilderness. But the decisive final blow happens at the cross. By entering humanity from the inside, the messianic seed exercises the perfect obedience that humanity failed to show in Eden, crushing the ancient serpent's head using the very weapon, death itself, that the rebel introduced. Finally, in Revelation 12, this being is explicitly identified with all of its titles combined: the great dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil, and Satan, finally and decisively cast down for good.
And guys, this leads to what is probably the most mind-blowing reversal in the entire explainer. Think back for a second. Remember that the Nachash rebelled because he was deeply, bitterly jealous of humanity's appointment to govern the earth? Well, the Apostle Paul drops this incredible line in 1 Corinthians 6:3. He writes, "Do you not know that we are to judge angels?" Let that sink in. The ultimate resolution of this cosmic war isn't just that humanity gets saved. It's that the covenant community is ultimately elevated to judge the very divine council members who rebelled against them in the first place. The precise status that the Nachash was so intensely envious of is ultimately vindicated and fulfilled. Talk about poetic justice.
It's an absolutely massive paradigm shift. By reading the text through the ancient Israelite worldview it was actually written in, the fall completely transforms. It goes from a simple, quaint moral fable into a vast, terrifying cosmic catastrophe. And honestly, that makes the ultimate resolution that much more profound. So I'll leave you with this. Does viewing the fall as a cosmic war change how you understand the rest of the story? It certainly gives a whole new weight to everything that follows, for sure. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.